Hey, Beck Barnes here. Before we get going, I need to reach out to you, my farm family listeners, with an SOS. We are in need of some more pictures of youngsters for our Cotton Kids section, which we publish in each issue of Cotton Grower. We are running low on this vital non-renewable resource, but that's where you can help. Listen, if you've got a cotton kid in your family, please just take and send us pictures of them from the cotton patch. All you'll need to do is to send us a high resolution photo file via an email to our editor, Michelle Katsaris. Now, her email is mkatsaris@meistermedia.com. If you've got an issue of Cotton Grower magazine laying around your house, you can find her email typically on the third page of each issue. That's the table of contents, and you'll see her email listed there. Now, our photos may not be on display immediately after you send them to us, but with just a little patience, you could see your cotton kid in the pages of Cotton Grower magazine in no time. Hey, thank you for your help. Well, hello out there in the Cotton Belt, and welcome to the Cotton Companion podcast, where we are always happy to have you with us. Now, we are coming to you in the aftermath of the July 4th celebrations here in East Memphis, where the haze of fireworks smoke is just now starting to lift. So I should say a belated Happy July 4 to our cotton community out there. By the way, I know that you all are a big part of what makes our nation so great and so worthy of celebration, and I am thankful to celebrate this country with our audience. Now, I know that many of you don't get to slow down for the holiday. We are here in the middle of the production season because this crop certainly doesn't take a break. We did have a USDA crop progress report released there at the end of June. It's been a couple weeks since we came to you, so this one's kind of awkwardly timed. It was a little over a week ago. USDA came out with the crop progress report. It's our most recent one as we record here on July 7th. But it showed that, virtually the entire crop it's been planted. And we got about 37% of the crop that is squaring already. So we're moving right along. Maybe a little more interestingly, USDA released their planted acreage report there on July 1, and it told us that y'all planted about 200,000 more acres than you had indicated you would plant back at the March Planting Intentions survey. So just for reference, in 2025, we planted 9.2 million, almost 9.3 million acres of cotton in this country. In March of 2026, we indicated that we were going to plant 9.6 million acres per USDA. And now on July 1, as USDA is finished with their counting, we actually have planted 9,850,000 acres of cotton in 2026. Now, of course, you all know that will not be what we harvest. There's going to be some attrition, but not a terrible number at the end of the day. We obviously, we saw the price of cotton went on a little run there in April and May, and that certainly encouraged some late acres just before, we got into really hot and heavy planting. And that's a good thing. It's good for y'all, and it's a good thing for Cotton Grower magazine. Now, our old pal, Dr. Don Shirley, a cotton economist with University of Georgia, he wrote a column on this that we published at cottongrower.com, and he noted that slight uptick in acres is actually probably a little underwhelming, a little bit less than we might expect, but we also know that there are other variables in play when our guys are penciling out their planting options right before planting, and notably the steep cost of key inputs this season. Now, I want to just change gears just to set up the topic of today's podcast, and it's a good one. It's a little bit unique. Now, if you are a subscriber to our weekly e-newsletter, the Cotton Grower e-news, then you will be aware that we had a big lead story last week. And that was that Dr. O.A. Cleveland, longtime extension economist with Mississippi State University, is gracefully retiring from his weekly marketing column. And we have published that thing at cottongrower.com for decades, for longer than I've been around. Here is an excerpt. I want to read you an excerpt from OA's last column, which we published last week. He said, "It is with heavy heart that I inform you that this will be my final weekly cotton market report. I have published Cotton Marketing Weekly for more than 50 years. It would not have been possible to maintain this longevity without the unwavering support of Mississippi State University, Farm Bureau, the National Cotton Council of America, the U.S. cotton producer, and a host of other industry supporters. Special recognition goes to the late Joe O'Neill, president of the New York Cotton Exchange, who provided much mentoring. I truly thank my colleagues for putting up with me." And that's classic OA, kind of chuckling, making fun of himself, but it has been quite the opposite. It's been a delight to have OA, you know, display his cotton market knowledge, share his cotton market knowledge with us over the years. Now, his final column did display all of the characteristics that have made him so popular with our audience over the years. He possesses that hallmark Mississippi wit. He is as sharp and knowledgeable about market fundamentals as he is funny and relatable to our producer audience. He sounds like, and you will hear him later in this episode, he's just as comfortable playing dominoes in the gin office as he is combing through, technical supply demand numbers at his office. He's always quick to smile. He's always happy to talk about Mississippi State athletics. And OA has been a fixture at industry events for decades. For us here at Cotton Grower, OA has been our featured speaker at luncheons and seminars and events that we've put on legitimately more times than I can count. I tried to count it this morning, and it's been so frequent that I couldn't do it. So I figured it would be as good a time as any to invite OA onto our podcast today for one last commentary on the market, but really more importantly, to look back on a career in service to the American cotton farmer. You're not going to want to miss that interview. It is long and expansive, and it's just a glimpse into what a treasure this man has been and what a friend to the U.S. cotton industry he's been. So stick around for that. First things first, though, we are delighted to hear from a valued supporter of the Cotton Companion podcast, Corteva. Our friend, Mr. Jared Walls, market development specialist with Corteva, is joining us today, and he recently sat down with and spoke to Hillary Wynn, our custom content manager. They talked about best practices with Enlist. So we are excited to bring you that interview right now.
Hi, I'm Hillary Wynn, Custom Content Manager at Meister Media Worldwide, publisher of Cotton Grower Magazine. Joining me today to discuss best practices for post-applications of Enlist 1 herbicide in cotton, including tank mix strategies, application timing, and tips to maximize performance and on-target results, is Jared Walls. Based in Georgia, he is a market development specialist at Corteva, working with cotton growers to help them select and get the most out of crop protection products for their farms. Jared, thanks for joining me on the podcast. When cotton farmers are making post-applications of Enlist 1 herbicide, what's the first thing they need to consider?
Hey, thank you, Hillary, for having me on the podcast again. So my first tip when talking to growers is always to use a program approach when trying to battle weeds. Enlist 1 herbicide has more than 1,700 qualified tank mix partners, including many herbicides, to customize a weed management program for every grower's needs. For example, we always recommend going out with either glyphosate or glufosinate for that broad spectrum control. And also, in addition to your contact herbicides, Inversa is a great option for a residual to add into the tank for all Enlist crops. Inversa is a proprietary encapsulated acetochlor that drives to the soil to create a protective residual barrier from weeds, and also providing excellent crop safety. So once you decide on the appropriate tank mix partners, a couple things to consider when you're evaluating application timing or crop stage and weed size. So when you're looking at the crop stage, you really want to make sure that the canopy is not restricting the product from actually getting down to the target. For our crops, labeled applications can be made to E3 soybeans up to the R1 growth stage. In Enlist cotton, we like to apply that before the first white bloom. And for Enlist corn, apply no larger than V8 or 30 inches tall. Unless you're using drop nozzles, you can go up to 48 inches. And then when it comes to weed size, we really encourage growers to spray those weeds when they're smaller. And that's with any herbicide program. So when weeds are less than 6 inches tall and actively growing, it's even better when it's closer to 2 inches. So we want to get those applications out sooner rather than later.
Once growers decide when to spray, could you offer a few tips to help them get the most out of their applications of Enlist One herbicide?
Yeah, so first we need to again recognize the flexibility provided by the Enlist weed control system and the Enlist One herbicide. There's no calendar cutoff dates, there's no restrictions around specific times of day or temperatures. Growers get a lot of flexibility with this system compared to other systems currently on the market. Along with its flexibility, growers should have the confidence that when used appropriately, Enlist herbicide will stay where it belongs. So we took a lot of time to develop the 2,4-D choline molecule and the Colex-D technology that's included in this formulation. With that, we significantly reduced the potential for volatility and drift without the need for additional VRAs or DRAs to be added to the tank. So as you're getting ready to spray, a few tips. Again, starting with a clean sprayer, clean tank, we want to make sure everything that was previously in there gets out to avoid contamination from any prior applications. Next is choosing the right nozzle. So on our label and on enlist.com, there's a wide range of nozzles and pressures to fit every need out there. We want to apply the best spray volume and pressure that you can. We ask that you use a volume of 15 to 20 gallons to the acre. And then we want to make sure that we're using the right rates. So the full rates recommended 2 pints per acre is very easy to remember. And then lastly, as you're getting into the field, make sure to check the wind speed. Drift potential is always lowest when it's between that 3 to 10 mile an hour range. We really don't want an extremely calm day. So a little bit of wind actually helps. Just try not to get above that 10 mile an hour range. And then lastly, avoid temperature inversions. Those typically happen between dusk and dawn. It's where hot and cold air create a layer that allow particles to move and drift.
Thanks, Jared. Those are some good tips for farmers to get excellent weed control this season. Where can farmers get more information about making applications of Enlist One herbicide?
Yeah, so firstly, farmers can go to enlist.com. There's a wide range of resources there, from application guides, best use practices, videos, and other materials. You can always, like always, contact your local Corteva sales representative with any question.
Jared, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks so much, sincerely, to Mr. Jared Walls from Corteva for joining us this week. And of course, to our custom content manager, Hillary Wynn, for conducting that interview for us. And now I want to welcome an old friend back to the podcast. I always say he's my favorite Mississippi State Bulldog, and that is Dr. O.A. Cleveland, Professor Emeritus of Economics at Mississippi State University. We've got him here. O.A., thank you so much for making time to join us today.
Beck, it's my pleasure and always will be my pleasure. But as we will discover here, this may be the last time I have the chance to interview you.
Well, now that's not binding. You gotta. There may come a day where I gotta consult your wisdom again. But yeah. I mean, on that note, O.A., I'll jump right in here. I gotta say, it's been a weekly rhythm of mine. On Friday afternoon, I will get an email from O.A. Cleveland that's got his column that kind of reflects on what has happened in the cotton market that previous week. It happens every Friday. I look out for it. So imagine my surprise. I guess it was a little over a week ago now, when I opened that email like I always do and started reading it and saw that O.A. was hanging up his writing pen for his weekly column, the Cotton Marketing Weekly, which he has, O.A., you've written for, I think, 50 years is what you said. So, tell me, O.A., that's no small matter. Tell me how you're feeling about stepping away from this task that you've done for so long, and why'd you feel like this was the right time to step back?
Well, certainly, Beck, 50 years, they are mixed emotions. I will also say there's a lot of personal relief during the week, thinking, well, I don't have to do that. I don't have to do that. There is that. But there's some mixed emotions. And as we've talked in the past, I still, when I get up in the middle of the night, the first thing I do is check the cotton market and see what's going on and wonder there. But doing it for 50 years and seeing the changes in the market structure, seeing the changes in the world trade and the shifts with respect to consumption and production and the somewhat demise, unfortunately, with the U.S. being the world's leading producer and the world's leading exporter. Well, we're losing those pillars that have built this industry, and then going way back to the year 2000 or the late 1990s when we changed our structure from a domestic use cotton to an exported use cotton. Just so many changes, and I had just coupled with my age, still hard to believe, just said, it's not as fun as it used to be. And when you get as old as I am, you're doing this for fun, and I've done it literally for my personal fun and enjoyment the last 20 years, and it just maybe age caught up with me, and it was not as it was more labor than I realized it was. So I said it's time to let other people do this, but I have thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been the most fun I've ever had outside of some interaction with my family. So I will miss it, but it'll be a good miss.
Yeah, I mean, I can empathize with you on that, on the writing note. Yeah, something's fun to do, man. You're excited to do it. It's the words come much easier when you're having a good time doing it. And you've been doing it for 50 years, so clearly you were enjoying it over that span. Oh wait, you did mention the last column was still very much a market analysis column, and you sent it to us at the end of June. So it was a little over a week ago now, but at that point you were talking about how the specs had kind of stepped away from the market, and it seemed like that we had the big positive movement that we saw in May, and then things had settled back in, and just kind of briefly, or things had settled back in June into that mid 70s window and calmed down, and it felt like things were kind of stagnating. Can you tell us briefly, our pod audience, what you're seeing in terms of the market settling into that mid 70s range here in the midsummer?
Okay, yes, let me approach it this way first. We've been 9 months or so with the largest trading volume in the history of cotton, and that was very fun for me. We just never seen volumes of that size before, breaking records and near records, and it continued to go. And we dropped back about a month ago, and the bottom just fell out of trading volume. We went from 100,000 contracts a day, and these are just rough comments, 100,000 contracts a day to down to 35,000 contracts a day. But that was more of the fact that I think the traders and the speculators were saying, well, there is so much uncertainty with respect to crop size, and there is so much problem. There are so many problems with respect to demand for cotton. We're just going to get out of this market, and we're just going to let the chips fall where they may. So trading volume dropped down into the low 30s even. And the market has been somewhat stagnant the last several months. Maybe we can pull dates and say amplify on comments, but the market's really been stagnant for about 6 or 8 months. We've traded 70 cents to 80 cents with any hope to move above 80 falling off the tree, and more concerned about going below 70 and into the mid 60s than anything else. And I think we're still faced with that. And that's accompanied with the fact that we're no longer the world's primary producer of cotton with respect to the world market. And we are no longer the world's primary exporter or provider of cotton with respect to the world market. So that's what's brought this market down into a more stagnant period. It's part of the reason specs left the market. But I will say, over time, and I learned this very early, speculators have loved the cotton market. It is, in fact, their darling. When they hit on cotton, they come in big numbers, and obviously they make lots of money. We first learned when I first started working in the mid 70s. Speculators were an ugly word. They are to some people today still, but without the speculators in the cotton market, I would suggest that also the market would be somewhere between 10 to 15 cents below where it is today. Nevertheless, fundamentals, supply and demand, actually set the price.
Yeah, well, I know. Oh, wait, you were telling me before we got to recording here that there's still a little bit of a weather market in play, and we actually could get a little bit of price relief, depending on what happens with some of these crops around the world. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is. What we've seen this year is the realization that the United States and Brazil together account for somewhere between 3/5 and 2/3 of all the world exports. And with the increase in the pre- predominance of Brazil, the situation down there has become extremely important, equally or more so important on the price of in discovering New York futures as relative to the U.S. activity, and in seeing we started the year with weather problems in Brazil, and we started the year with drought issues, i.e., weather problems here in the United States. And all of a sudden, when we realized that the market had slipped down into the very low 70s and it had fallen out down into the 60s, and all of a sudden we realized, wait, we've got to get this market back up, but because there are crops, potential crop issues in both of our leading exporting countries. And as we have moved through the year, we've gotten some relief from weather in South America. We've got limited relief from weather here in the United States. But the big U.S. crop out in Texas, West Texas, South Texas, the rolling plains, and the high plains, that's still very much a problematic crop. But we've had good weather this past weekend, or past 10 days, let's say that, for most of that area, but definitely not all of that area. So this market now is just teeter-tottering right there at 75 cents to 80 cents, trying to figure out if it's going to go higher or lower based on what Mother Nature delivers. And the seed varieties that are out there today, they have proven that they can withstand a tremendous amount of tough weather, of dry weather. That old taproot issue that ages ago, a guy named George Mullendore, and you've got to be real old to remember him because he was my actual 4-H leader growing up. And following him in the state of Mississippi was Will McCarty, that many of you will know. But at this, those guys talked about the importance of getting that seed in the ground, of getting good seedling vigor, and that taproot just going straight down. And we have learned now that these varieties that we have today, that the seed companies have given us something that taproot just goes straight down, and it doesn't matter what the weather is, there potentially will be an outstanding crop out there. So we can't write off this big crop just yet, but there are more and more signs that we will have a weather-reduced crop, not only here in the United States, but somewhat in Brazil, potentially in China, somewhat in India. And all of a sudden, I've mentioned, 3 or 4 of the world's largest producers potentially facing more weather problems than they are weather benefits. So there's still a lot of interest in this market going higher. And I think as we look at what the specs are going to do, they're very slowly bleeding back into the market. But if they come in with any volume, we're 85, 86, 87 cents. But that being said, I hate to throw out numbers that big because I know people's eyes, including mine, get big. Well, I'm not going to sell mine because it's 80 cents. Boy, Cleveland said it might go to 87, 80 cents, maybe even 90 cents. So I'm not going to sell that. I'm going to tell you, go ahead and start pricing right here at 80 cents. Sell 25% of it. I mean, my gosh, if it does go to 90 cents, you've still got 3/4 of it left that you can sell at that price. I'll hush my preaching there.
Well, that's going to be my headline, is that OA Cleveland said 90 cents.
Oh, I expected that. I'll be disappointed if it's not.
No, I wouldn't do that to you. You know me better than that. Okay, OA, listen, you gave me a lot there, and I appreciate it, and I always value that. But that's the last bit of technical supply demand stuff I'm going to ask you about. Today is supposed to be about OA. So how about you tell me instead, how did you get your start in this business of cotton market analysis? And how did that snowball into, you started out 50 years ago writing that column, and here we are today, and you're one of the most trusted and most sought after voices in the U.S. cotton market. So how did we get going, and how did we end up here?
Well, people listening to me, it's their bad luck. But it basically, I came out of Vietnam and said, okay, it's time to go to graduate school, got my doctorate. Uh, First job was there with USDA, and I worked in something at that time was known as the cotton and grains division. And that just set me on my way with cotton, and immediately started in 1976, started writing it was probably biweekly then, just a half a page on the cotton market, what we might occur. And then in late 1976, I made the decision to move to the Mississippi Cooperative Extension Service, work for Extension. And the gentleman that hired me, Dr. David Trammell, said, I want you to write a cotton market report every week and make sure we send that to the county agents and to the director of Extension. Nobody writes anything about marketing, and I want to see it. And I just started that, just a few words about what was happening, why it was happening, and as I always like to say, what might happen, and if I'm wrong, what to look for. So that dovetailed in over about a 2-year period into a weekly that we began to send out to not only agents. Back in those days, it was extremely important for the state specialist to coordinate 100% of his material through the county agent. As times have changed, as business has changed, then the specialist was expected to have more direct contact with the grower himself. So I began to send that out back in the very late 70s to all growers and to all periodicals such as Cotton Grower. And I was always happy to see many people a feather in y'all's cap and Cotton Grower's cap. Oftentimes, and correctly so, cotton producers are referred to as producers, and oftentimes they're referred to as growers. I chose the word grower, and I've always used American cotton grower. And when I do that, I always smile and think about the heritage and the history of Cotton Grower magazine. And that's no hit on any other periodical. They've been great. There are great periodicals, and they've been very helpful to me. So I don't want to say that, but I'll just take you back to a guy that's even older than me, if anybody is, the recently deceased Bill Spencer at Cotton Grower. But I'm probably ad-libbing too much. But I began to develop that, and then Mills picked up on it. Then one time I got a call, that was a telephone call from an individual in China, Mill, and I could, with my Southern accent, had very difficult time communicating and talking with them, but they wanted a copy of that report. So I was very honored to send it to them. And then the things morphed and moved into situations. And that was the beginning of it and led to open to more and more doors.
Well, yeah, I feel like what's being left kind of unsaid but understood here, you were the only one doing something like that.
Well, as it turned out, I guess I was. Of course, the brokerage houses had excellent cotton analysts and commodity analysts, and they were doing it. But that information was private, somewhat available only to their customers. So yes, I became somewhat at that time the only one doing it, and the entire purpose was to send that information to the Mississippi Cotton Grower, and then it became the Mid-South Cotton Grower, the Southeast Cotton Grower, then the West Texas, all cotton growers around the world, around here in the U.S., and then it picked up steam, and once the Chinese picked it up, and then the Chinese mills called, and they warned it, and their mill association picked it up, and they said, now we have 10,000 members on our email list. Is that okay? Well, here's a young man that thinks he's young anyway, and from Lexington, Mississippi, of all places, and 10,000 Chinese textile mills are going to read this. I don't think so. But again, it was simply fun. And interacting with the Mississippi Cotton Grower, the Mid-South Cotton Grower, Delta Council, all the organization was very outstanding. And going way back in history, I somehow developed a friendship with the late, great Earl Sears, who was president of the National Cotton Council, and his footprint at the Council still fits today very firmly. The things he developed, the organizations that he created within the council and how to operate the council. And Mr. Sears was extremely cooperative and set me on a footpath with the American with the National Cotton Council of America, NCC, as we often say. And I would tell growers today that no matter how mad you get, no matter how upset you get, no matter how rich you get, always support the National Cotton Council. It is your organization. It is an organization that through my 50 years, they've always listened to the grower. The grower has the right to go outside the other industries to Congress and lobby and use the name the National Cotton Council. So with fear of misrepresenting some things there, I'll hush on that. But again, the National Cotton Council, and I fussed at them, don't get me wrong, and they know it, and they fussed at me. But it is the single most commodity organization in the United States that pushes and helps its growers more so than any other organization.
Very good. Now, hold on. We're going to get there. I was going to ask you about the National Cotton Council, but we're getting there in a moment. Wait, as you look back, well, I just want to say, when you talk about getting started there and the extension, the manager down there in Stoneville, where you got stationed in 76, encouraging you to write that more frequently for the benefit of Mississippi producers. And you talk about how it started getting, broadcast regionally more broadly. That's extension working as it should. That's the extension agency, the extension system in this country operating for the benefit of producers, operating for the benefit of American farmers. So, a nice little glimpse into innovation at the extension level for the benefit of our farmers. Anyhow, don't let me start getting up on the soapbox. When you look back over your career, what have been some of of the stuff you're most proud of, some of your favorite times in this decades-long span of writing this column and getting to speak at events and things of that nature? What do you look back and smile about?
Well, throughout the cotton industry, starting with the growers, the friendships, the professional friendships, the personal friendships, the Southern Southeastern Cotton Growers and Generals Association. While I'm not as close to that organization as I once was, that's just the way things happen. But it was a very a wonderful organization, continues to be, and supported its growers. And I had tremendous success in interacting with them, and they helped push the newsletter too. And you go out to the high plains of Texas, numerous visits out there, and going north and south, east and west, and meeting all those wonderful growers out there. And one became absolutely probably my best friend. He's now deceased, but a gentleman by the name of Wayne Teal was just absolutely wonderful. He kept me on my toes, but he was also a pure gentleman, interacting with those growers across the belt. I remember sitting with Jack Stone out in California, and they were always, of course, California is always talking about water, and I began to offer him my water that I had at the table, telling him if he needed to take this home with him, he needed the water more than I did. But it was the Delta Council in the Mid-South in Mississippi, and the Louisiana and Arkansas organizations, the going into Alabama, going into the southern southeastern cities, and just being honored with being invited to speak there and interact, and listening to those gentlemen tell me what they knew about marketing. And very seriously, a few literally and very qualified to do so tell me how little I knew about marketing. And I really did and still do today. But I benefited from those strong personal relationships that you find in the cotton industry. Of course, I spent a few years in New York, and we talked earlier about it. There was a gentleman there, the president and CEO of the New York Cotton Exchange, Joe O'Neill, who I had met, of all places, at the Peabody one day in a small group meeting, called me and said, "Why don't you come up here and spend 6 months with us, and let's talk about options and let's learn about options." I was just spellbound, taken back, and after a little negotiation, I got the extension service to agree to do that. Joe, everyone in New York thought I was an Irish Catholic because the Joe O'Neill was Irish Catholic, and talk about the way people stick together, ethnic groups, individual groups, and personalities and whatnot. Well, if I was Joe's friend, I obviously had to be Irish Catholic. Of course, I said, "What are y'all talking about? I'm Southern Baptist." That's probably where I grew up. I didn't even know what Catholicism was here in the deep South. Of course, all that's changed today, but it was all very interesting. And Joe was the consummate gentleman, and he understood the cotton market, and more so than any person in the world, his life's journey was to make sure that the integrity of the cotton market was preeminent among all markets. He would not stand for any shenanigans or any activity. And of course, he at the New York Cotton Exchange, they had oversight and could see the private trades of people. And if things got out of hand, they would come down with a light hammer, and if needed be, they would come down with a sledgehammer. But seeing how Joe operated, one of those people that if you didn't love Joe, there was something wrong with you. A wonderful person, a wonderful man, a wonderful family man. And he always wanted to make sure that people in the cotton industry were cooperated and that they were very professional and very personal from a personality standpoint with each other, even if they did not like each other. I saw Billy Donovan and Julian Hornberg have some bitter battles, and won't say which one, call each other names and get up and laugh and walk away together. But they did it with Joe O'Neill there negotiating and maneuvering them on the same path. One of my great honors was for Billy Donovan to tell me if I could find the student and recommend it to him, he would hire that student. Names that so many people in the cotton industry have forgotten. A gentleman down in Dallas named Raymond Cooper. Just loved to play with the October contract. He had great success with it. Pete Diffley over in Alabama. I don't know his son. I understand his name is Brad. I've seen his name, but Pete was, I guess Pete was a Hornberg representative, if I'm not misrepresenting some names there, but Pete was a real gentleman and he was very helpful. But Joe O'Neill set me on that path. And one day after being in New York for 6 months or so, I got a telephone call from Merrill Lynch in New York. And they said, "We'd like for you to take this job." And I laughingly said, "No, not interested." And they kept calling back, and I must have showed some interest because they finally on the fourth call, I threw out a final number that I knew they would not accept, but I also knew would guarantee my children private schools in New York City and all that kind of good stuff. And lo and behold, they accepted. And I initially said, "Oh no, I didn't ask for enough money." But you're working under the president of the New York Cotton Exchange, and 2 years later, you're Merrill Lynch's cotton man, and as we called it, Mother Merrill. And you're Mother Merrill's cotton man, and you're going around the world speaking about cotton, meeting not only the U.S. clients but the world clients. And you're in Hong Kong, and you're in China, and you're at a cotton mill that still is owned by Toyota, Mr. Toyota. That was the family business, was textile activity. They by that time they had become maybe not the world's largest producer of automobiles, but they loved cotton. And you run into people all over the world that love cotton. Funny story to me, Joe O'Neill, we're in New York one day, and we're on the elevator, and some rather foul language being spoken by some young kids that were on the floor. They were traders in other commodities, the financial industry, and when the finances and the oil industry went absolutely crazy in the 70s, it brought a lot of very young kids into the market that were experts in mathematics, and they could see the market trading, but they also brought a bit of a young person street mouth. And Joe just looked at me and said, "You're lucky, OA, growing up in the South." He said, "People grew up as gentlemen, and we don't have that same situation here in New York. But no matter where you go in the world, you will find gentlemen are in the cotton business. And that stuck with me. Of course, people like myself and others have changed that somewhat, but it's been an absolute great journey. And meeting Joe there with having his support, and then Merrill Lynch. As I've told people, once you're Merrill Lynch's commodity man or woman in any field, once you're Merrill Lynch's person, you can open any door in the world, or the door is actually open for you. After I left Merrill Lynch and went back to Mississippi State, I was too old to move to New York and start a new life. I was already into my 50s and had many years in the Mississippi Extension Service. And I knew I could go back to Mississippi State, and I loved cotton, and I'd met all these wonderful cotton people. I found out they weren't just in the United States, but cotton has the creme de la creme around the world. It was very natural for me to begin doing some work with my primary competitor when I was with Merrill Lynch, and that was Eddie Jernigan in Nashville, Tennessee. Eddie is a big 6'8" redhead, very gargantuous and very extremely smart options trader, in my opinion. But Eddie loved cotton too, and cotton was he was very dedicated to the cotton market, and he and I just got along very well together. Traveled the world together numerous times. Full of himself, he thought it was so funny one night in Thailand after I'd been sick, food poisoning, and the doctor had said, "Don't go any place that serves fish." He thought it was so funny that he made reservations and took me to a fish restaurant, and began just laughing at me because of my girlish stomach, as he called it. Well, 6'8" redheaded. Had all I could stand, and I didn't feel good. I had a mug of beer, and I just threw it all over him. And rather than killing me, he said, "You're having a little problem tonight, aren't you, OA?" Just like that. And yeah, I was having a problem that night, but he was a tremendous influence on my life. And we lost him 4 years ago, 4 years and 2 months ago. I could tear up thinking about Eddie. But he and Joe O'Neill were the two in the cotton industry that had a primary influence. I can go back into, as I mentioned, Earl Sears, guy by the name of Arlie Bowling, who was in the cotton industry that was able to get out and smooth talk you into doing anything. But mentioning these few names leave out some extremely important names and people around the United States that I have been very close to. The Fed in Taiwan invited me to come speak to them and talk about cotton. I mean, I'm still astonished at that, and to not to stretch the truth, because I will tell the truth. One evening, I was sitting at a table next to Ben Bernanke, the chairman of Fed. Well, he had not asked to sit with me. As far as I know, I'm not even sure he spoke to me that night. We happened to be at a small restaurant in New York City at the same time, but it was an Italian restaurant, and not to plug them, but Campanola's. It had been recommended to me by someone on the floor. They said it's a small family place. You'll enjoy it. And it's authentic. And I still go to Campanola's every time I get the chance to go to New York. It's on the Upper East Side. But Gerald Nieper and I went there. You know, if we ever, I read Gerald Nieper's cotton comments every day. Probably fuss at him in the cotton market more than anyone else, but I would be surmised or disappointed if I didn't see Gerald's comments. There's another comment from California I read. I don't have permission to mention their name, but I thoroughly enjoyed Gerald's comments, and he'll write another 10 years probably. But again, the cotton industry has given me, outside of my children and my Lord, they have given me my family and my Lord. They've given me my life. They've given me anything and everything I could have ever asked for. And it's always been a pleasant road, even though that we've exchanged professional words.
Yeah, man. I got to tell you, I could sit there and listen to you talk about your travels with cotton all day, but I got to start steering us towards the finish line here. Oh, wait, I know one thing that you sign off every column with, each one that you've sent me over the years. The last line is encouraging our audience to give a gift, to quote, give a gift of cotton today. And on this one, on your last one, you also included encouragement for folks to support the NCC, which you mentioned the NCC earlier in this conversation. But can you just tell me why you think that's such an important message to our farmer audience?
The number of farmers in the United States is declining. The number of cotton farmers in the United States is declining. That decline will continue. The importance of cotton production in the United States on a relative basis will continue, is there, and it will continue. But its ability to shape its future, shape its agricultural policy is declining simply because the agricultural base in the United States is declining. And Washington is going to listen to the numbers and not necessarily, well, Washington's going to listen to the votes, not necessarily the resources that are used to combine any particular output. And we don't have the votes. So it always has been important. And the cotton industry has been a leader to do its best to maintain cooperation of all agricultural groups. Cotton has recognized that it's potentially declining importance relative to the number of votes and the number of senators and representatives. So they have recognized that they had to bind together not only the industry and all segments of the industry, but all of agriculture itself. And cotton did that more so than other industries and became the leader of it. And they have had closed door, knockdown, drag-outs with other agricultural industries to make sure that when they went to Washington, they went with one voice. And cotton continues to do that and continues to be in a leadership category in that regard. And that's the most important thing that we as individuals, in the cotton industry, that's the most important thing that we have going for us and providing for our future. And again, that's being led by the National Cotton Council. They're being pulled from all segments of the industry, segments that have different views and many times are at odds with each other. But the council has been able to maintain that cooperation within the cotton industry itself, and that is absolutely necessary. It's the number one requirement to keep cotton as an important commodity here in the U.S. and around the world. So the Cotton Council provides that leadership with what I will say relatively low funding. The people I have known there have always been tremendously dedicated and have worked very hard, regardless of how much I fussed at them and complained about them and said they were wrong. They certainly had no qualm in telling me I was wrong. And I think that made us both better. Just sitting there one day, and I don't know how I did it. Was never good at coming up with something, but I said, I need to sign off something today. And out of the blue, the Lord just sent it to me, I suppose. And I'm not here as an evangelist, but I don't know knowing myself, I don't know where it could have come from because I couldn't come up with something like that. I said, give a gift of cotton today. And, that came out of the blue in about 30 seconds. And it's, in a sense, has become my tagline. And I've gotten a lot of comments and publicity out of it. But I've loved doing that. And I'll keep doing that for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it was always a nice little fun but accurate encouragement to do something that was helpful. A nice part of the OA Cleveland brand is what I would call it. But listen, OA, man, I got to get out of here. I want to thank you so much for everything that you've done for this industry. It seems inadequate to just say thank you from the editor of CG Magazine after 50 years of doing this stuff. But truly, you've been such a blessing to the farmers in this country and to me personally at CG Magazine. I mean, you bailed us out and provided your expertise dozens of times. When we needed someone to entertain a group of farmers that we were trying to entertain, we would call on OA. And man, you've always been great at what you do. And you will always have a friend at Cotton Grower Magazine. I assure you that. And man, I look forward to seeing you maybe in the grandstand at Duty Noble Field sometime here soon.
I'll invite you down anytime. I'll try to get you tickets to my skybox, but you can't wear the red and blue.
That's right. Yeah, I don't know if they let me in up there. I don't know.
I'll have to do a great deal of lobbying.
There you go. Okay, OA man, thank you so much for joining us today, and enjoy your time, sir.
Thank you, Beck.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the Cotton Companion podcast. Thanks go out especially to our sponsor Corteva and their Enlist herbicide system with Mr. Jared Walls, and of course to our guest Dr. O.A. Cleveland of Mississippi State University. And as always, we want to thank you, dear listener, for joining us and for your continued support. We hope that you've enjoyed this episode, and if you did like what you heard, please be sure and spread the word for us. Tell your farming friends and neighbors about the Cotton Companion podcast. Here's where and how they can find us.
You can find the Cotton Companion in 3 easy ways. First, go to cottongrower.com/companion, or simply click the podcast tab at the top of the homepage. Second, subscribe to our channel on iTunes or wherever you find your podcasts these days. And 3, sign up for our weekly e-newsletter, the Cotton Grower e-News, that's delivered to your email inbox every Tuesday morning. You can do that by going to cottongrower.com/subscribe. Also, be sure to follow Cotton Grower on social media. We are at Cotton Grower Mag on Twitter. And on Facebook, you'll find us by searching for Cotton Grower Magazine.
The Cotton Companion podcast is produced by Mr. Tyler Hatch and Miss Kim Henderson, our talented colleagues at the world headquarters for Meister Media Worldwide in lovely Cleveland, Ohio. I'm Beck Barnes, and I will be back with you in a couple of weeks with the next episode of The Cotton Companion.
'Cause God made me a farmer. Yeah, he works and he works and he works and he works all day. God made a farmer.